The morning began like any other, or so it seemed at first. He awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was dim, and for a brief moment, he thought he was still caught in the haze of a strange dream. His surroundings didn't feel right, and the air was thick with an unsettling chill. His eyes adjusted to the low light, but the sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. There, lying on top of him, was an alien, an actual alien, a being that looked like it had stepped out of some far-fetched sci-fi movie. Tall, thin, and with pale, translucent skin that shimmered slightly under the faint light. Its large eyes stared back at him, full of confusion and curiosity. For a moment, neither moved, neither spoke. Time seemed to slow down as the shock of the situation settled into his bones. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. Panic surged through him. How had this happened? The last thing he remembered was falling asleep in his own bed, far away from anything strange or alien. He tried to push the being off him, but his body felt heavier than it should. His arms shook as they attempted to make contact with the cool skin of the alien's body, but they barely moved. The alien's grip wasn't forceful. It was as though they were both frozen in time, caught in a moment neither understood. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Had he been abducted? Was this some kind of elaborate dream? The alien blinked at him slowly, and its large eyes seemed to widen, as if it had just realized something. It pushed itself off him with surprising grace, but instead of getting far, it merely sat on the edge of the bed, its long limbs folding awkwardly. The alien's strange, silvery hair hung loose around its face, shimmering like it was alive with a subtle glow. He scrambled to his feet, his head spinning. The room he was in felt foreign, too advanced, too unfamiliar. The walls were smooth, metallic, and curved in a way he couldn't explain. Strange symbols glowed faintly across the surfaces, lighting up in colors he had never seen before. His breath caught in his throat as he looked around, trying to make sense of the place. Was this even Earth? He felt his heart rate increase as the full scope of the situation hit him. This wasn't just some weird encounter. This was something he couldn't explain. "Wah! What is this?" He finally managed to croak, his voice shaky. The alien tilted its head, mimicking his confusion. It opened its mouth, but no words came out, only strange, unintelligible sounds. It tried again, gesturing toward itself, then pointing to him. It was trying to communicate, but there was no language he could understand. Panic mixed with frustration, and his pulse quickened. He felt like he was suffocating under the weight of uncertainty. Why was this happening? What was going on? A few more silent moments passed before the alien seemed to gesture toward a small device on the nearby table. It was an intricate object, glowing with the same strange symbols as the walls. The alien's eyes met his, and then it pointed toward its chest and back at him, making an attempt at a gesture that suggested it wanted him to approach. He hesitated. Should he trust this creature, this being from another world? Should he approach the unknown device? His mind was racing with possibilities, but no answers came. He took a step forward cautiously, his movements slow. The alien watched him closely, its gaze full of uncertainty, but there was no hostility, only curiosity. He reached the table and picked up the device, feeling a strange warmth pulse through it as his fingers brushed its surface. There was something familiar about it, like it was alive, aware. The moment he touched it fully, the device lit up, and the wall seemed to hum in response. He looked up, and for the first time, he saw something resembling recognition in the alien's eyes. It made a soft noise, almost like a sigh, and pointed at the device again, then to the walls, as if urging him to understand. Confusion settled into his chest like a stone. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was the beginning of something larger, something far more complicated than he could comprehend. He tried to steady his breath, his mind racing. But before he could ask another question, a sudden jolt of energy surged through the room, and the device in his hand flickered violently. Something was wrong. The alien leaped to its feet, moving faster than he could react. It seemed to be as alarmed as he was, its eyes wide in panic. In the chaos that followed, the device suddenly emitted a sharp, bright light, blinding them both. He stumbled back, dropping the device, and in that moment, the alien's soft, almost musical voice rang through the air, not in a language he recognized, but in a way that somehow made him feel it was trying to comfort him. The light pulsed again, and everything around them seemed to shift, the room bending, warping as if reality itself were being torn apart. He had no idea what was happening. Only one thing was certain now: his life had changed in a way he couldn't even begin to understand. The light dimmed slowly, and the world around him seemed to settle back into place. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the low glow of the room once more. The alien stood there, silent, its eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and something else, something that might have been guilt. It didn't move immediately, as if waiting for him to react, to make sense of the sudden surge of energy that had overwhelmed them both. His mind was still in chaos. He couldn't fully grasp what had just happened, nor could he explain the strange pull in his chest, a feeling that something was shifting, something enormous was happening. The walls of the room seemed to ripple as if alive, their strange markings flickering and changing. The alien hadn't made a sound since the flash, but its eyes were trained on him, as if it were waiting for him to say something, anything. He swallowed hard, his voice hoarse as he finally spoke. What just happened?" The alien stepped forward cautiously, its long fingers reaching toward a panel on the wall. It tapped at the surface, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to pause. Then, with a low hum, a new image appeared on the wall, a holographic display of sorts. The alien's strange symbols flared to life, moving and shifting in ways he couldn't understand, but the patterns somehow felt important. His heart raced as the alien turned to face him again, its eyes wide and full of unspoken meaning. The silence between them stretched, and he felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Was this some sort of communication attempt? The alien's gestures were clear enough, but the symbols, the strange, swirling script, it wasn't a language he could comprehend. It was something alien, truly beyond his understanding. The frustration was beginning to mount, and he felt his patience thinning. The alien, sensing his tension, stepped back slightly, its hand still hovering near the display. It pointed to the wall, then to itself, and back to him. The words it uttered were guttural and soft, completely unintelligible, but its tone carried a weight of sorrow and confusion. It spoke again, this time more urgently, as if trying to make him understand something crucial. The moment felt incredibly intense, like they were both on the precipice of something monumental. But the alien wasn't giving him answers, not in words, at least. It was trying to convey something without saying it outright. His frustration grew. He rubbed his temples, trying to push back the overwhelming rush of confusion. What was this creature? Why was it here? How had it come to be in his room, in his life? And why did it seem so important? He needed answers, and he needed them now. "I don't understand," he said, his voice breaking through the tension in the room. "Can you speak my language? Can you explain what's going on?" The alien paused, seemingly considering his words. It made a soft clicking sound, almost like a sigh, and moved toward the display again. This time, it didn't touch the wall. Instead, it gestured toward the floor in front of him, then to its own chest. With a deep breath, the alien pointed to its own head, tapping at its temples, as if trying to show him something about itself. It then pointed back at him and made the same gesture, tapping its temples as though emphasizing the idea. It clicked again, louder this time, and the strange symbols on the wall began to shift in a way that was almost too fast for him to follow. He stepped forward, leaning in closer to get a better look. For the first time, a word appeared in the display, an alien word, but it was followed by an English translation: connect. The realization hit him like a wave. The alien wasn't trying to speak to him with words. It was attempting to form a bond, a connection, something that transcended language. It was trying to communicate through shared experience, shared thought. His pulse quickened as the weight of the situation pressed down on him. He had no idea how this connection would work, nor how it was even possible, but it was clear that the alien was desperate. Desperate to make him understand, desperate for him to share in whatever this was. But was he ready to trust this being? A being from another world, from an unknown place, with abilities and technology he could barely comprehend. He stepped back, the overwhelming sense of danger rising in his chest. He had no idea what the alien might be capable of, what this connection would do to him. Yet, in the back of his mind, a thought lingered. Could this be the key to understanding what had happened? Could this strange, alien being actually help him figure out why he was here and how he had gotten to this point? Before he could make any further decisions, the alien reached forward, gently grabbing his wrist. The touch was cool but not threatening. The alien's gaze was unwavering, and there was something almost pleading in its eyes. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something deeper, something far more significant. The alien spoke again, and even though the words didn't make sense to him, the meaning behind them was undeniable. The creature wanted him to make a choice, to decide what came next. He looked down at the alien's hand still holding his wrist, and for the first time since waking up in this bizarre world, he felt something else, a flicker of hope. Maybe this connection could give him the answers he needed. Maybe, just maybe, it could lead them both to something greater. But only if he dared to take that first step into the unknown. "I'll trust you," he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper, but enough for the alien to hear. The alien seemed to understand, and its eyes softened as it released his wrist. In that moment, something shifted between them, a silent agreement, an unspoken bond. They weren't alone anymore, and together they would have to face whatever came next. The days that followed were a blur of strange, unspoken exchanges between him and the alien. The once stressful moments of uncertainty gradually transformed into something else, a curious understanding. They still couldn't speak each other's language in any conventional way, but somehow, through gestures, expressions, and silent communication, they began to find common ground. It was as though they were learning a new language, one made of trust and shared glances rather than words. At first, it had been unnerving. The alien's presence was constant, its large eyes watching him in silence, always seeming to calculate and process every move he made. He often caught it observing him from across the room, its expression unreadable, though there was a sense of quiet understanding in its gaze. It was almost as if it knew he was still adjusting, still uncertain. The alien's actions were deliberate and gentle, never imposing, always patient. It would offer him food, strange, glowing fruits and liquids that tasted alien but strangely familiar, and it would silently gesture for him to try them. Though the taste was unlike anything he had known, he ate without complaint. There was something calming about the alien's quiet encouragement. Each day brought new revelations. The alien seemed to have a profound understanding of human emotions, and although it couldn't fully communicate with words, it showed empathy in its actions. One evening, as he sat on the floor, staring out into the strange world beyond the walls of their small space, he felt an overwhelming wave of homesickness. The alien, sensing his isolation, had approached quietly and sat beside him, mimicking his posture. It reached out, touching the side of his arm lightly, an almost tentative gesture that spoke volumes. For the first time, he didn't feel so alone. But it wasn't just the quiet comfort that made the alien's presence bearable. There were moments of shared wonder too. The alien, with its vast knowledge, introduced him to things he never thought possible. It took him to a small observation deck that had been hidden away in one of the far corners of the room. There, through large glass panels, they looked out into the stars. He had seen space documentaries on Earth, of course, but nothing could compare to standing in the presence of those distant stars, feeling as though they were within arm's reach. The alien pointed to the stars, gesturing toward them in a way that seemed to be trying to explain their significance. It was strange how it spoke with its eyes and hands, how its whole being seemed to pulse with the desire to share this cosmic wonder with him. He watched in awe, the vastness of the universe unfolding before him. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The alien, noticing his hesitation, smiled, a small, brief expression that seemed almost human in its warmth. Despite these moments of quiet connection, there were still so many questions left unanswered. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know why the alien had come to Earth or how it had ended up in his room. There were pieces missing from the puzzle, and each time he thought he might be close to figuring it out, something new would happen, throwing him off course. One afternoon, after a quiet meal shared between them, the alien gestured toward a compartment in the far corner of the room. The compartment was filled with strange, shimmering equipment. The alien had been working on the device ever since they had first encountered it, but now its movements seemed more urgent. It pointed at a small screen, then at a series of buttons and switches on the device, its large eyes searching his face for some kind of recognition. The device, whatever it was, seemed to be malfunctioning. The alien was focused, its brow furrowed in concentration. As the alien tapped at the device's surface, it suddenly flickered to life, projecting an image into the air. The image was hazy at first, but gradually it cleared to reveal a map of what looked like an alien star system, with bright clusters of stars connected by lines that seemed to represent some kind of interstellar network. There were also strange symbols accompanying the map, symbols that meant nothing to him, but to the alien, it was clear they held significance. The alien's eyes darted back and forth between him and the map, its hands moving quickly, trying to explain. He leaned in closer, trying to understand what was happening. The alien's voice, low and soft, hummed in the air again. This time, the words were different, but there was a rhythm to them. The alien didn't stop, its voice growing slightly more urgent. A sense of fear crept into the air between them, something almost tangible in the way the alien moved. His heart rate quickened as he watched the symbols flicker across the screen. This wasn't just a map. It was a distress signal. It was a call for help. The realization hit him hard. The alien wasn't stranded here by accident. Something, or someone, was after it. The alien's behavior had shifted subtly, and for the first time, he saw the edge of vulnerability in its gaze. It wasn't just trying to fix the device. It was trying to escape. Whatever danger it was running from was closer than he had realized. The alien stepped back from the map, gesturing to him in a way that seemed to demand an understanding he didn't yet have. But it wasn't just the map that caught his attention. No, it was the look in the alien's eyes, the unmistakable fear that suddenly flashed across its face. It wasn't fear of him. It wasn't fear of the unknown. It was fear of something else, something much more terrifying. He swallowed hard, the weight of what the alien was trying to convey pressing down on him. There was a silent exchange between them now, a moment where everything else seemed to fade into the background. It was clear. The alien wasn't just a visitor. It wasn't just a misunderstood creature trying to survive. It was running from something bigger, something more dangerous. And somehow, he had gotten caught in the middle of it. For the first time, he realized just how deep this connection went. The alien wasn't just an enigma. It was a being from another world, with its own struggles, its own mission. And now, he was part of it. And with that realization came a sinking feeling in his chest. There was no turning back. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. And the world he thought he knew would never be the same again. The days that followed were heavy with the weight of unspoken tension. The alien's behavior had shifted, and it was no longer the quiet, patient creature it had been when they first met. Now it moved with purpose, its movements quick and sharp, as if constantly watching for something just beyond reach. The once calm atmosphere between them had turned into one of caution, as though they were both on the edge of something that was coming, something inevitable. He couldn't help but notice the change in the alien's eyes. Where once there had been nothing but curiosity and an almost childlike wonder, now there was something darker, a quiet resolve, mixed with an undercurrent of fear. It had begun to shut him out in small ways, pulling away whenever he tried to engage. The alien spent long hours at the device, working frantically to fix the malfunctioning parts, its long, slender fingers moving with practiced precision. It was clear now that it was trying to send a message, a call for help. The map it had shown him before still glowed faintly in the background, the symbols flickering as the alien typed in new coordinates, adding and removing lines in a frantic attempt to make sense of the chaos. But it wasn't just the alien's actions that had shifted. The entire environment around them seemed to hum with an unsettling energy. There was an undercurrent of something that had always been there but was now becoming more pronounced. The walls of the room, once smooth and metallic, now seemed to pulse with a quiet rhythm, vibrating softly in tune with the alien's actions. The glowing symbols on the walls had begun to change more frequently, almost as if they were responding to the alien's distress. He didn't understand what was happening, but he could feel it in his gut. Something was closing in, something from beyond the walls of this strange, foreign place. The alien was running out of time, and with each passing day, the urgency in its movements grew. It spoke to him less, no longer attempting to communicate with gestures or shared glances. There was no time for that now. One evening, the alien finally broke its silence. It approached him cautiously, its eyes locked on his, and for a moment, they simply stood there, exchanging a silent understanding. Then, in a voice that was softer than he had ever heard it, the alien spoke. "They are coming," it said, its words still foreign, but somehow clearer this time. The language was still strange, the rhythm of it different from anything he had ever heard, but he understood it. "I cannot hide much longer." He felt a chill run down his spine. The alien's words confirmed his worst fears. Whatever it had been running from, whatever danger it was trying to escape, it was closing in on them. The tension in the air was palpable, a thick heaviness that seemed to cling to everything around them. The alien turned away, walking toward the far corner of the room, where the device sat, glowing with an eerie light. It began to tap furiously at the panel, the symbols flickering more rapidly now, flashing as though trying to tell him something urgent. The alien's hands moved so fast it was hard to follow, but he could see the panic in its actions, the way its fingers trembled as it worked. Suddenly, the room shuddered, a low hum vibrating through the floor beneath his feet. The alien froze, its eyes widening in alarm. It glanced back at him, then at the walls, as if sensing something he couldn't yet understand. The walls seemed to ripple again, the symbols flashing erratically. For a moment, everything was still, and then a deep, resonant sound filled the air, louder now, like the hum of an engine, but distorted and warped. It was coming from outside. The alien's gaze flicked back to him, its expression unreadable but its eyes wide with fear. Without a word, it grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the far corner of the room, where the strange door-like structure had been sealed shut ever since they arrived. The alien's fingers flew over the surface, pressing certain parts of the wall that he hadn't noticed before. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "Quick," the alien urged, its voice tinged with panic. "We must go. Now." He didn't hesitate. He followed the alien down the narrow hallway, his heart pounding in his chest as the walls around them seemed to close in. The passage was cold, dark, and cramped, but the alien moved with a confidence that he could only hope to match. Its long limbs stretched easily as it led him through the twisting corridors, never stopping, never looking back. They reached a small chamber at the end of the passage, a small circular room with a low ceiling. The alien gestured toward the center, where a glowing panel lay dormant on the floor. It was a piece of technology he hadn't seen before, sleek and metallic, with strange symbols etched into its surface. The alien moved toward it quickly, pressing its palm against the glowing panel. The symbols flashed in response, and the device hummed to life. "They will come for me," the alien said, its voice more urgent now. "They know where I am." He could feel the weight of its words sinking in. The alien was running, not just from danger, but from something that was after it, something that had the power to track it across vast distances, something that was hunting them both. The panel before them flickered, and a map appeared, different from the one he had seen earlier, more detailed, more specific. There were red markings across the stars, lines connecting various planets and locations. The alien's finger traced the map, following the path of the red markings. "This is where they are," the alien said, almost to itself, as if the realization was too much to bear. "They are close, too close." The sound outside grew louder, a deep mechanical hum that shook the walls. The alien looked back at him, its expression grim, its eyes filled with something close to regret. "I did not want you involved in this," it said, the words soft but heavy. "But now it is too late." Before he could respond, the ground trembled beneath them. A sharp, screeching noise echoed from the walls as the door to the small chamber slammed shut with a violent force. The alien's eyes widened in shock, and it reached out toward him. But the air between them shifted suddenly, a distortion that made his head spin. The light in the room flickered violently, and the walls began to pulse, vibrating with an energy he could feel deep in his chest. The danger was no longer distant. It was here. The alien turned to him, its face drawn in a silent plea. "We must move. We must hide. They cannot find us." And just as the words left its lips, the door exploded inward with a deafening crash, revealing the true extent of the threat they were facing. The door shattered with a force that seemed to shake the very foundation of the room. The alien flinched, its eyes wide with terror as the walls around them reverberated with the impact. For a split second, everything stood still, an eerie silence hanging in the air, thick with the promise of imminent danger. Then, from the shadows beyond the doorway, emerged figures cloaked in darkness, their forms only vaguely discernible in the dim light. They moved with terrifying precision, their footsteps silent on the cold floor. The alien stiffened, its gaze darting between the intruders and him, its body tensed as if ready to spring into action. The fear in its eyes was unmistakable. It wasn't just afraid for itself, it was afraid for him too. Without thinking, he stepped forward, instinctively putting himself between the alien and the looming threat. He had no idea who, or what, these beings were, but he couldn't allow the alien to face them alone. There was no time for rational thought, no time for strategy. He had made his choice the moment he decided to trust the alien, and now that trust was being tested in the most terrifying way possible. The alien's hand shot out, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. Its grip was firm, but there was a desperation in its touch. "You don't understand," it whispered urgently. "These are the Seekers. They will stop at nothing to capture me." The alien's voice trembled, a note of raw fear creeping in, but it quickly regained its composure. "They cannot know you are here. You must stay hidden." He didn't need to be told twice. His pulse was pounding in his ears, his mind racing with questions he had no answers to. The Seekers, whoever they were, they had come for the alien, and by association, they had come for him. The alien backed into the corner, its form tense and poised, like a creature ready to fight or flee. The figures at the doorway began to step forward, their movements slow and deliberate. The air around them seemed to shimmer, a strange, unnatural energy radiating from their presence. He could feel it, a sharp prickling sensation running down his spine, like the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes bearing down on him. They weren't human. He could tell that much instantly. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and their eyes, if you could call them eyes, were nothing like anything he had ever seen. They were black, empty voids, swirling with an unsettling darkness that made his stomach churn. They weren't just aliens. They were something else. Something far worse. The alien, sensing the growing danger, stepped forward again, its body bristling with energy. A low hum filled the room, and a strange light began to glow from the alien's fingertips. The seekers halted for a moment, their gaze fixed on the alien with unnerving intensity. But it wasn't fear they displayed. It was expectation, as if they had known this moment would come. The alien's voice broke the silence, its tone sharp and defiant. "You will not have me. You will never have me." The words were laced with power, but the alien's form wavered slightly, as though the energy it was using was taking a toll. The seekers didn't respond with words. Instead, they raised their arms in unison, and a wave of dark energy rippled toward the alien. He didn't know what it was, but he could feel it in his bones. It was a force unlike anything he had ever experienced. The air thickened, and the walls seemed to close in, as if the very space around them was bending under the pressure of the energy. Without thinking, he lunged forward, grabbing the alien's arm and pulling it away from the oncoming wave. The force was so strong it almost knocked him off his feet, but he held firm, refusing to let go. The alien's eyes flickered with surprise, but it didn't pull away. It seemed to understand that they had no choice but to face this together. "Stay close," the alien murmured, its voice barely audible over the overwhelming hum of energy that filled the room. "We cannot afford to be separated. If they take us apart, they will destroy us both." He nodded, the gravity of the situation sinking in. There was no escape, not unless they fought back, and they couldn't fight alone. The seeker's energy intensified, a swirling vortex of darkness gathering around them. The alien's power flared up in response, but it was clear that it was struggling. The energy from the seekers was too strong, too overwhelming. It was all the alien could do to hold them at bay. In that moment, he realized the depth of the alien's vulnerability. It wasn't invincible. It wasn't some all-powerful being. It was a survivor, just like him, doing everything in its power to stay alive. The seekers took another step forward, their movements fluid and precise. They were closing in. The alien's eyes locked with his, and for a brief moment, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They didn't have much time. They had to act now. With a sudden, swift motion, the alien reached out and pressed a hidden panel on the wall. The room around them seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was shifting. The floor beneath them trembled, and the air crackled with energy. "Run," the alien shouted, its voice filled with urgency. Without a second thought, he turned and sprinted toward the newly revealed passage, the alien at his side. The seekers were still coming, but the alien had opened a way out, a way to escape for now. They ran, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the narrow corridor. The air was thick with tension, the overwhelming sense of danger pushing them forward. The alien's presence beside him was a constant, reassuring force, but even it couldn't quell the fear that gripped his heart. They didn't look back. They couldn't afford to. But the further they ran, the clearer it became. This was only the beginning. Whatever the seekers wanted, they weren't going to stop, and neither would the alien. Not without a fight. They had to keep moving. There was no turning back. The passage they had fallen into seemed endless. Narrow, winding corridors stretched out before them, twisting like a maze, each turn leading them deeper into the heart of the alien structure. The walls pulsed with an eerie glow, their shifting symbols flickering with each step they took, as if reacting to their movements. The air was dense, thick with the scent of metal, and something else, something sharp and unfamiliar. His breath came in ragged gasps, each step echoing through the seemingly infinite hallway. The alien moved effortlessly beside him, its pace unbroken, its movements swift and precise. It didn't look back, its eyes fixed ahead, but he could see the strain in its posture. The creature had been through this before, no doubt. This wasn't the first time it had been chased, hunted. But it was different this time. This time, it had someone else to protect, and that weighed heavily on both of them. "Keep moving," the alien urged, its voice sharp with urgency. He didn't need to be told twice. They had no time to waste. The Seekers weren't far behind, and with each passing moment, the oppressive weight of their pursuit seemed to grow. The low hum of the alien structure reverberated in his chest, the sound of their footfalls vibrating through the walls. He could feel the energy building again, the palpable force of it pressing against him like a storm on the horizon. His mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened. How had they ended up here? Why had the alien chosen to come to Earth in the first place? Was he just a pawn in some larger game, some intergalactic struggle he didn't even understand? The questions swirled in his mind, but the answers felt out of reach. All he could focus on now was survival. He had to trust the alien. He had to keep running. The passage narrowed even further, forcing them into single file. The walls pressed in around them, the low glow from the symbols barely enough to see by. He could hear the alien's quickened breath beside him, a soft whisper in the silence that was more telling than any words could have been. It was scared, just like him. The alien was running not just for itself, but for him too. And in that moment, as they sprinted through the corridor, he realized that the bond between them had solidified in a way he couldn't describe. The alien stopped abruptly, its head tilting slightly as it paused to listen. Its body was rigid, tense, like an animal sensing danger. He froze too, straining his ears to hear what the alien had detected. A sound, a faint hum, like the whir of a machine winding up. It was distant at first, but it grew louder with each passing second. The sound of something coming closer. Something mechanical, something powerful. The alien's eyes flicked to him, a silent warning in them. "They're here," it whispered. "We need to move. Now." But before he could respond, the sound grew deafening. A sharp metallic screech cut through the silence, followed by a deep, rumbling vibration that shook the floor beneath their feet. The corridor seemed to tremble, the walls warping slightly with each thud of the approaching force. "We're too late," the alien said, its voice low, almost regretful. "They found us." A blinding light flooded the passage, and the walls began to pulse in time with the light. The alien's eyes flashed with a sudden, intense urgency. Without a word, it grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward a side door, an opening in the wall that hadn't been visible moments before. He stumbled, disoriented, but the alien didn't slow down. It yanked him inside, and the door slid shut behind them with a soft hiss, sealing them in darkness. They were in a small room now, the air heavier than before, thick with the scent of machinery and unfamiliar substances. The glow from the walls was muted here, casting long shadows across the floor. The only sound was the pounding of their hearts and the alien's ragged breath. It stood still for a moment, its eyes scanning the space, alert for any signs of pursuit. He pressed his back against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. His mind was reeling. What was happening? Where were they? Why had they been chased by those terrifying figures, the Seekers? The alien seemed to sense his confusion, and for the first time in days, it spoke to him in a soft, quiet tone. "They're after me," it began, its voice barely above a whisper. "I was part of a mission, a peacekeeping effort, but my mission went wrong. It went horribly wrong, and now they want to use me. They want my knowledge, my technology. They want everything." He felt a chill settle over him at the alien's words. There was so much more to this than he had realized. This wasn't just some random encounter, some freak accident that had thrown them together. The alien was part of something bigger, something dangerous, and he was caught in the middle of it. "What do they want with you?" he asked, his voice shaky, his thoughts racing. The alien's eyes glinted with a mixture of pain and regret. "They want my mind, my ability to understand and manipulate the energy of the universe. The Seekers are not like us. They are driven by power, by control. and they will stop at nothing to force me to help them." He swallowed, the weight of the alien's words pressing down on him. He wasn't just a witness to this battle. He was a participant, whether he liked it or not. The alien was not just an innocent victim. It was a key player in some kind of intergalactic war, a war that was now threatening to consume both of them. The alien stepped closer, its hand resting on his shoulder with an almost gentle pressure. "I didn't want you involved. I didn't want this for you," it said quietly. "But now that you are, I need you to understand. They will not stop. They will come for us both, and we must be ready." The door to the small room began to hum again, and he could hear the distant sound of footsteps. The Seekers were closing in, the threat growing stronger with every passing moment. There was no time left for questions, no time to try and piece together the full story. They had to fight back, and they had to do it now. The alien turned to him, its eyes steady, its expression resolute. "This is our only chance," it said, the urgency clear in its voice. "If we don't stop them here, we will never get another." He nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. There was no turning back now. He had chosen to trust the alien. And together, they would have to face whatever came next, no matter the cost. The tension in the air was suffocating as the distant hum of the Seekers grew louder, vibrating through the walls with a relentless, oppressive force. He could feel the vibrations deep in his bones, as if the very structure of the alien ship was resonating with the approach of their pursuers. The walls seemed to close in, tightening with each passing moment, and every footstep reverberated with an echo of inevitability. There was no longer any escape. The alien and the human were cornered, trapped between the Seekers and the looming darkness of the unknown. The alien, standing beside him, was no longer the calm, composed figure it had been when they first met. Its body was taut with tension, its breath coming in shallow gasps. The weight of its eyes, those large, alien eyes, was filled with a sense of desperation, a quiet but undeniable fear. It had tried to protect him, tried to shield him from the reality of its existence, but now there was no way to shield him from what was about to happen. The Seekers were closing in, and the alien knew there was no turning back. "They won't stop," the alien whispered, its voice steady but tinged with a deep sorrow. "They will take everything. Everything we've built here. All the trust, all the hope, gone." He could see the weight of the alien's words in its eyes, the sorrow that filled them. And yet there was something else too, something more dangerous, something fierce. The alien was not about to go down without a fight. And neither was he. Whatever was to come, they would face it together. He had chosen to stand by the alien, and now there was no choice but to see it through. The room seemed to shift once again, the air humming with an ominous energy. He knew the Seekers weren't far. They were close, too close, but as he glanced around the room, his gaze fixed on the strange control panel in the corner, the one the alien had been working on for days. It was still glowing faintly, the symbols flickering as if calling to him. He turned toward the alien, his mind racing with an idea that was as reckless as it was desperate. "I think I can help," he said, his voice strained but determined. "I saw how you worked this before. I can do it." The alien looked at him, its eyes filled with uncertainty. "No, you cannot." But he cut the alien off, his voice steady now. "I have to try. If we're going to stop them, we have to act now. I don't know if I can fix it, but I can try. You've taught me enough to understand how it works." The alien hesitated, its gaze flickering between him and the control panel, as if weighing the decision. There was a long, heavy pause, filled only with the low rumble of the Seekers approaching. Then, finally, the alien nodded, its expression grim. "Do it, but be careful. The energy is volatile. It's not like anything you've encountered before." He didn't hesitate. He moved toward the control panel, his heart pounding in his chest. His fingers trembled slightly as they hovered over the surface, but he forced himself to focus. He had no idea how it worked, but he had seen the alien manipulate the device enough times to know what to do. There were symbols, patterns, strange markings that didn't make any sense to him. But somehow he knew what he had to do. His fingers began to move, tracing the patterns the alien had shown him, following the glowing lines as they shifted under his touch. The moment his fingers made contact with the panel, a surge of energy shot through him. The air crackled, vibrating with the power of it. It was like nothing he had ever felt before, raw, intense, and overwhelming. His body felt like it was being torn apart, every cell alive with energy. He gasped, feeling the power flood through him, and for a moment, he thought he might lose control. But he focused, pushing through the overwhelming sensation, using every ounce of willpower to stay grounded. The alien stood behind him, its eyes wide with both fear and awe. It didn't speak, but its presence was a steady reminder of why he was doing this. This wasn't just about survival. This was about protecting something. Someone who had trusted him. Someone who needed him. He pressed harder, his hands moving in rhythm with the patterns on the control panel. And suddenly, a flash of light erupted from the device. The room was bathed in a brilliant, searing glow, and he felt the energy pulse around him, vibrating through the very walls. The symbols on the panel shifted, rearranging themselves as if coming to life. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, and for a moment, it felt like time itself had slowed. He could hear his heartbeat, pounding in his ears, and the rush of energy around him felt like it was pushing him to the edge. Then, with a final, resounding crack, the energy exploded outward. The light in the room flared blindingly, and the very air seemed to vibrate with power. For a split second, everything went silent. The glow from the panel faded, leaving behind an eerie, still silence that seemed to linger in the air. The device had powered down, but it wasn't just that. It was more than that. It had done something. The room felt different now, charged with a new kind of energy. He stumbled back, his legs giving way beneath him as the rush of power drained from his body. The alien reached out, steadying him with a firm hand. Its eyes were wide with disbelief, a mix of wonder and awe. "You did it," the alien whispered. "You stopped them." But before he could respond, a harsh, guttural sound erupted from the hallway outside. The Seekers were here. And this time, they weren't coming alone. There were more of them now, more than he had ever imagined. The alien's eyes flashed with determination. "We can't stay here. Not anymore." He nodded, his breath still shallow as he struggled to regain his composure. They had won this round, but the war was far from over. Together, they moved quickly, side by side, down the narrow corridor, toward the next unknown. They didn't look back. There was no time for that now. They had no idea what was waiting for them on the other side of the door. But they knew one thing for sure. They had each other. And with that, they would face whatever came next. Together. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun.